Also talked to the President of the United States, who initiated the call. His comments were that it appeared that we had things under control. He did make an offer if at a later point we needed additional assistance.
Governor Andy Beshear today at 4 o'clock giving that update, talking about his conversation with President Donald Trump last night. President Trump tweeting last night to Beshear that the federal government stands behind you and is ready to help.